r/ask Reddit, students of Reddit, what's the weirdest thing a teacher has ever done in class? Had this substitute all the time in high school. He would bring this licorice candy that resembled chalk and placed it on the blackboard ledge without anyone noticing. Start introducing himself and say HES weird cause he likes eating chalk, proceeding to pick up the candy chalk and eating it. When everyone looks at him like WTF, he revealed it was candy. Super weird guy, but I guess that's an interesting way to be remembered. My 5th grade math teacher had a pet chalk he called Wanda. He was a goofy fellow and would say things like "watch Wanda add the numerators." One day he had forgotten the chalk in his pocket and it had broken. When he went to take Wanda out to do a lesson, there were a bunch of chalk pieces in his hand. He excitedly announced Wanda had babies. Had a science teacher in middle school that once changed his shirt 14 times in one class period. All to teach us a lesson about being observant. But how did he change his shirt? Right in front of you, or did he duck into a cupboard each time? Was he wearing 14 shirts to start with, and he just kept taking them off? He arranged for someone in the office to page him. His car was parked around the corner from our classroom, so it didn't take him long to go to his car, change, and come back. This man was weird, but in a good way. He had all kinds of organs stored around the classroom. If you needed a hall pass, he'd have you tote one of the organs with you. He rigged the classroom clock to run backwards. He had an entire wall covered with Weekly World News articles. He kept a chainsaw under his desk and would rev it up when we got too noisy. Science teachers, generally speaking, are weird in a good way, but this man is who I aspire to be. My science teacher would slap dead fish on our things if we left them out during a lab. It taught us to put our things away, but God, that fish stunk so bad. I'm almost positive the chainsaw would work a few times, but after a while the kids would ignore it. Then comes the day when the admin walks in because they hear the kids being too noisy, and there is the teacher at the front of the room with a running chainsaw over his head, shaking it in the air, all exasperated. High school biology teacher showed us a video of a woman giving birth. After the video ended, she accidentally pressed rewind without stopping the video first. Good old VCR days. Making us watch the whole thing in reverse. Imagine a man grabbing a baby by its head and sticking it back in. When I was a teacher in college, I noticed I'd been assigned to a 4th floor room with a really wide ledge below it that was hard to see. So on the first day of class, I arrived half an hour early when the room was empty, climbed out the window onto the ledge, then waited with a book until I was 10 minutes late, and then climbed in the 4th floor window to introduce myself. It made the impression I hoped. My teacher noticed that only girls asked questions and engaged in class, and he reckoned it was because he was a male, so they were attracted to him. Hoping that the guys would ask more questions, he wore a dress for an entire day. Did this method engage them? Well, everyone was so distracted that it was not a very productive lesson. Next time he should wear nothing as a control. A friend of mine's sister was sitting in the chemistry classroom. Everyone started to get lethargic and dizzy, complaining of headaches. The teacher realized she had left the gas on and just chuckled like, "Whoops, almost killed all my students." She didn't say that, but that's just the energy she had. And turned off the gas. And our nutrition teacher made us eat boiled chicken feet for a grade, but that's probably standard in her class. I was taking a BS film history class for a GEN at the local community college before I transferred to a 4-year, and the teacher was this weird guy who was in his late 60s, had dreadlocks, and was really into health/fitness, and liked to talk about weird shit all the time. Like how he bet he could outrun the 20-year-old men in the class in a race. One day in the middle of a lecture, completely out of the blue, he points to a girl in the middle of the class who looked 18 or 19 and asked who has a reason for why I shouldn't be in a relationship with her. The first person says, because he's her teacher. So he says, okay, but what if I weren't her teacher? Then somebody says he's significantly older than her, and he says he's really healthy and plans to live past 100. After an uncomfortable amount of time, somebody finally says there is no reason they shouldn't be together, and he says that's right. and we continued with the lesson like it had never happened. It wasn't relevant to anything. I understand that she didn't raise her hand and say, "Because I don't want to, but I really wish she had, LOL." One of my English professors had a giant misshapen head with wisps of black hair in odd places that he never combed. His glasses never fit straight, and he preferred teaching in his sock feet. Just weird. That said, he invited the whole class over to his home at the end of the semester for a potluck lunch. The few of us who showed up had a surprisingly fun time. He shared his vinyl collection of classical music with us and told some great stories. I had a history teacher in middle school who would dress like a different person and come in as a substitute. Dr. Frankenfurter, here for your daily lesson. I studied zoology, and one of our teachers was fantastic. The first lecture we had with him, we walked into the room to find him lying on the floor wearing a shirt that matched the blue color of the carpet, shouting, "You can't see me because I'm using camouflage as a defense mechanism." Other memorable moments include throwing about 1 in pennies on the floor one at a time to demonstrate asexual reproduction. Demonstrating selfish herd theory by pretending to be a predator attacking students sitting on the outside seats and requesting they dramatically fall down when attacked. The number of times he pretended to be a dinosaur. Absolutely wonderful teacher, and I hope he never changes. Had a couple of weird teachers. One punched a hole in the wall because people weren't paying attention. He also punched out a window because too many people failed a test. Was a really nice guy, and we were in a temporary building. But that was just weird. Had another teacher that was striving to get our attention. One day he promised to teach a full hour upside down if we were quiet for that one lesson. We were actually quiet since we all wanted to know if he would actually do it. And the next class, he walked up to the blackboard, put his hands on the floor, kicked his legs up against the blackboard, and was teaching like that. He was pretty red at the end. Had another teacher that was a bit on the wild side. If a pretty woman walked past the building outside, he would jump on the windowsill and start pounding the window like a gorilla. He also had a sacrificial dish that would get thrown to you if you weren't quiet 5 minutes after class started. But the best part was, since he was a chemistry teacher, we made him promise to show us how to make a stink bomb by the end of the year, if we were a good class. So we were a good class for a whole year. At the end of the year, we reminded him of his promise. He said he remembered. He got some chemicals from the locker, switched on his Bunsen burner, and proceeded to mix the chemicals, explaining what he was doing and why. The chemistry involved and stuff. He then put it on the burner, casually walked out of the class, and locked the door. While we were all in horror watching this yellow smoke coming up from the teacher's desk, he was laughing maniacally at our attempts to lessen the smell. He even got our economy teacher out to laugh with him. Great prank. Not super weird, but this is the best place to share. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you about the greatest teacher I've ever had, and the greatest I will likely ever have again. For now, we'll just call him Mr. B. He was my 8th grade US history teacher. This guy could get away with doing the craziest and coolest shit during class. When we were learning about the Second Continental Congress, he assigned a founding father to each of the students, and we reenacted the whole thing in costume. In 2008, he was on the news for his model presidential election, something he still does to this day, albeit on a smaller scale. On our last productive day of school, he converted his room to an underground bar, and taught us about the prohibition of alcohol while dressed as Al Capone, and serving us beer. I think it was apple cider. He was always excited and unpredictable, and he never had an off day. I loved his class so much, and he's the main reason I'm so proud of my country. I had an excellent calculus teacher in high school, and the school knew they were lucky to have him, so they kind of looked the other way when he did crazy shit. The students loved him too, and he was always the kind of teacher that would go out of his way to help and made the class fun. But he did a lot of things that were pretty nuts. He often jumped up on his desk and would say things like Superman. One time he reenacted the Killer Bunny scene from Monty Python with a crumpled piece of tissue sitting on a table. He yelled "Killer Bunny." while diving onto the table and proceeding to break it. One thing he sort of got in trouble for was one day he decided to take the American flag in his room and march all his students down the hall while loudly shouting patriotic things. Also, during a pep rally one day he convinced another teacher to wrestle with him during the middle of it. I missed that class. So we do this thing called Classcraft. It is like a game for students, and you make your character, and you get gold and XP for doing good things, and lose HP for bad things. But that's beside the point. There is random events, and one time the person with the lowest XP, he was absent for a week, had to choose a song for the teacher to sing. He chose the Thomas the Train theme song, the one that had words. So he sung it, but while doing it he flailed his arms everywhere. I still laugh about it to this day.